Welcome to C-Files. Thanks for joining me. I'm doing that video I said I might do after the inauguration and talk a little bit about the changeover from one administration to the other, which happens every 4 years unless the person gets reelected and it's their second term. Big changes from the last administration to this one. And we're going to talk about some of that. What the changes are, what's happening. Of course, you've been hearing all about it all over social media, all over the news, and everybody giving their opinions on things. But I'm going to give you something right now that you probably didn't hear about, and that is a Supreme Court case that occurred January the 14th, I believe it was, 2025. Moore versus Alliant Credit Union. It's M-O-O-R-E, Moore, versus Alliant, A-L-L-I-A-N-T, Credit Union, just so you could, if you're going to look it up. And I really encourage everyone to look that up, because essentially what happened was Moore was in foreclosure on his house for not making his mortgage payment. And he actually filed a lawsuit against the credit union for foreclosing on him, or having foreclosing procedures for not paying his mortgage. You say, now who would in their right mind would do that? That doesn't make any sense. Well, what he did is he challenged the use of debt notes, the Federal Reserve fiat money. And actually the court, if you read the court case, the Supreme Court, I think it was Justice Alito that wrote the decision. He actually used the term fiat money or debt notes. He wrote it that way in the decision. And basically what the argument was is that money printed by a private bank, the Federal Reserve, is not legitimate. In other words, he was basically calling our dollars. I mean, this case blew my mind when I started reading it. It's pretty interesting. This was basically called, if you will, my observation, not theirs, but my interpretation of what they were saying. Basically, monopoly money. It's no good. It's a debt note. And the Supreme Court decided in that decision. I don't know if it was 5-4 or what it was. I just saw the thing written up by Justice Alito, the decision. That the Supreme Court decided that the use of a Federal Reserve debt note was illegitimate for mortgages. I don't know if that will carry over to car loans and bank loans and all of that. There may be a far-reaching effect of that. I don't know. If there's any lawyers that want to pipe in on this and kind of educate us on it, that would be great, because I'm not an expert when it comes to that. But I'm just reporting what the decision was. The decision was that Moore was right. They decided for Moore against Alliant Credit Union, basically saying, well, no, you don't have to go into foreclosure, because the whole mortgage deal was illegitimate, because the money that was used for the deal, the fiat currency or the debt notes, i.e. Federal Reserve dollars, and if you have any cash money you want to take out and look at it, it says Federal Reserve Bank, right? Or Federal Reserve note, were illegitimate to use for the mortgage. Moore won his case. What kind of implications does that have for the rest of us? I don't know yet. But there are those who are coming on social media and saying, hey, that means that the bank cannot demand payment on my mortgage, because it was Federal Reserve notes or fiat money that they used for my mortgage payment, to set up the deal, the contract on the mortgage. Folks, I'm not going to go that far with it. I don't know enough to give that kind of advice or not give that kind of advice. I would say if you're going to go down that road, make sure you seek someone who understands finances, seek a lawyer who can look at the case, someone who actually understands that type of law and look at the case and tell you, okay, what's the deal here? What can you do? What can you not do? Be careful because, it's like people who kept saying, well, under the law, you don't actually have to pay income tax. The income tax is illegal, it's illegitimate, and all of this, and they use these various arguments to say that, but they end up in prison. If you don't pay your income tax, trust me, the IRS will come and get you. They will get their money. I remember Willie Nelson not paying income tax, and they took everything. They took his golden records out of his house. I mean, they cleaned him out to take the money that he owed on that income tax. I remember when Wesley Snipes went down the same road, and he ended up in prison. So you be careful with what you hear and see on social media. Make sure you do proper research and talk to the right people, like a good lawyer or an accountant or someone like that understands these things before you make any moves. So that would be my advice on that. But the decision is very, very interesting, and it could send reverberations all through the financial world, and it could be a step toward illegitimizing the Federal Reserve Bank as an entity that could print our money. And so my question is, and my wondering is, will this be used to say, okay, Federal Reserve, you're not allowed to print the money anymore because of Moore versus Alliant Credit Union. Now it's going to be U.S. Treasury currency, not Federal Reserve Bank currency. We'll have to see what happens on that one. So it should be interesting to see what goes on. But if you have not at least looked at the summary of that case, go look at it. It is worth your time to look at. Okay, so we've had a switch over of administrations. And so I'm a person, I don't like to dwell on the past. I've dealt with enough things in my past that I don't want to have to dwell on those things. I'd rather look toward the future, which, by the way, I'll be going to a planning and zoning meeting tonight, and I have the opportunity to vote for a new church building for a local church here in Locust. And I'm looking forward to voting in a new church building because they had to have a special request for that because of a special zoning request for it, and I have no problem with it. I'm sure the board, from the indication of the last meeting, is going to be unanimous on voting in that new church building. So that'll be another addition to our community that will be a positive addition. So what's going on with Trump? All these executive orders and all of these things that people are talking about. Well, let me go through some of the things that he's doing. Tucker goes walking through Washington, D.C. the day after election, and everybody's greeting him and shaking his hand. Something else. All right. I'm looking up some of this stuff. So let's see. Okay, so he signed an executive order, Trump has, designating drug cartels as foreign terrorist organizations. So what does that mean? Well, at least while he's president, over the next 4 years, because, the next president can come in and void all of his executive orders and make his own executive orders. I'll explain those to you in a moment. at least for the next 4 years, they will. This gives him the authority to use the full force of the military to go after the drug cartels and do it legally. If they are designated as a terrorist organization, like, Al Qaeda, like all the different, like Hamas, like Hezbollah, the different ones that we've identified or labeled in the Middle East that we have gone after using our military, it's the same thing, just because it's here in our hemisphere, in the American continent. Then, it's the same thing. He's able to use the U.S. military using lethal force to go after them. So we'll have to see what happens in that. By the way, mentioning the word America, of course, Gulf of Mexico versus Gulf of America, people I think are confused on that. He's not naming it the Gulf of the United States. He's not naming it the Gulf of the United States of America. He's naming it the Gulf of America. Well, guess who is in America? Mexico. Guess who else is in America? The United States. They are in North America. There's North America, there's Central America, and then there's South America. America is a continent, not a country. And a lot of people are missing that. So naming it the Gulf of America means he's including all of the American countries as a part of that. So he's being inclusive, not exclusive. It's Mexico that's excluding everybody else, and the Gulf, lines along our southern states border. It's along Louisiana, Alabama, Georgia, Mississippi, Florida. They're all right, and Texas too, all along those. I don't think, is Arkansas, maybe, maybe part of it, but anyway, all of those states are right there on that, and Mexico also borders that body of water. So why not call it the Gulf of America, which would include Mexico? Mexico is a part of America, the American continent. Are the school systems that bad, folks, that we have to explain this? That America is a continent, not a country? The United States of America is a country. It's the United States that is located on the continent of America. Hopefully education will get better. So we have, there's just a few of these things. So another one on the foreign terrorist of the cartels. Let's see here. Sorry for the throat clearing. I've been dealing with that lately. I woke up this morning to go to a men's Bible study at one of the local Sunset Grill. Breakfast is wonderful there. And it was 17 degrees when I walked out the door. Now, I know you folks in the Northeast are just laughing at me going, oh, you whining baby, it was 17 degrees, because you guys are used to 17 below. I got it. But I lived in San Diego for 38 years, and it turned 50. We were bundling up, okay? So it's all relative. It's all about being climatized, okay? I'm happy I was able to handle 17 degrees for a very short time between the house, the car, and to go eat. So anyway, and we're expecting snow to come through. Now, I don't think it's going to hit my area. Probably east of me it will be hitting. So we'll see how that goes. Calling a halt to the strangulation of overregulation of America. So that's Elon Musk putting that out. It says President Trump signs a regulatory freeze preventing bureaucrats from issuing more regulations. I know he did this the last time he was in office. And basically, the last time, I think it was like for every regulation they made, they had to get rid of 3 or something like that. Like three had to go for every one that they created. But he's putting a freeze on it. They can't make any more regulations. And this is not, we're not talking about laws being passed by Congress. We're talking about the regulatory agencies like, the ATF, like, what's the agency that handles the farm bureaus and all that? I can't remember all the acronyms of all the different agencies. But those type of agencies, the FBI, ATF, the health agencies, the CDC, so forth, those kinds of agencies are not able to make any more regulations. So he put a freeze on that. Let's see. So he signed an executive order on sex and gender identity, that there will be male and female in the federal government. Now, let me explain executive orders real quick. Executive orders, people say they have the authority and the power of law. That's true, but only in the federal government. Imagine when you go to a new job, right? You typically you'll get a handbook from that job saying these are the rules. These are the, this is human resource, put this out, and this is what they expect of you. This is your job description. These are the rules of the job. This is how much you get on leave. You get so much vacation time, so much sick time. You have to be at work on time. All of this kind of stuff. How you're to conduct yourself while at work. Well, that's basically an executive order for the federal government. He's just setting the rules by which the federal government will be governed over the next 4 years, just like Biden before him set various rules for the federal government to be governed under over the next 4 years. It's like their employee handbook, in a sense. More than that, but I mean, it maybe not the greatest comparison, maybe not the greatest example, but it kind of helps to understand basically how it works. In other words, an executive order does not have authority over you and me as American citizens as long as we don't have a connection to the federal government. If universities, for example, are going to take funds from the federal government to help pay for, that nice new science building that they're going to build or whatever, and the federal funds are involved in paying for that, then they're going to have to follow federal rules when it comes to that. So that if federal rules say you have to have a Title IX coordinator on your campus or you don't get the money, guess what? They're going to have a Title IX coordinator, right? So that's kind of how that works. But as far as you and I as everyday Joe citizen out here, no, we're not under the control of executive orders. However, what has happened is that we have come under the control of regulatory agencies and their regulations, because at some point, and I don't know when this happened, Congress basically wrote a blank check for these federal agencies and said, we, Congress, have christened you to go forth and set regulations and conquer all you want. And so Congress gave these regulatory agencies permission to do that. If Congress were to ever pull that permission back and say, we de-Christian you and we no longer are allowing you to set regulations for the American people, then that ends. That comes to an end. They could only do it with permission of Congress and the president. And the president just said, we're putting a freeze on it. You're not allowed to make any more regulations. And of course, they're going to be doing a review of these agencies and looking at them and determining, okay, are you cost effective? Are you beneficial to the American people? Are you doing a job that helps helps the American people? Is it cost effective? Things that a businessman would look at if he's looking at his company, his business or his corporation. saying, okay, we're bleeding money here. It's not being cost effective, and this particular division of the company is not producing anything. So we're going to eliminate that part and lay those folks off, or we're going to reassign those folks to a different area of the company. And they don't, if they're not productive, then and they're not making the company money, then we're going to have to let them go. This is basically the mentality that Trump is coming in with when it comes to the federal government. Elon Musk is going to have the same mentality when it comes to DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency, which I understand is only going to last about 6 months long. So Musk is going to have about 6 months to make these reforms and these changes within these agencies, these executive agencies, like what I mentioned earlier, ATF, FBI, down the line you can go. There's a whole bunch of them. And they're going to determine whether the agency is going to continue to exist, whether it's going to go away, if it's going to be reformed, or is there going to be major cuts, what's going to happen. So this should be a very interesting 4 years to watch and see what happens in the government. Okay, still more about it. Everybody's all over the Mexican drug cartel thing. Oh, by the way, he's already secured the border. I mean, this was posted 22 hours ago from the making of this video, and this video will probably take 15 hours to load up typically. I mean, I don't know why it's so slow on YouTube lately, but maybe it's just my area, maybe internet, I don't know. But anyway, police in riot gear have now shut down the port of entry in El Paso, that'd be in Texas, as President Trump reinstates the Remain in Mexico policy. So law enforcement's in full riot gear, and they're shutting down the port. So they're telling them, don't come across. It's not going to be like it was before. You will be taken into custody immediately, and you will not be released into the country. Keystone Pipeline, the energy bills, executive orders are going through. Now, here's the thing. For these things to be more permanent, he's going to have to get them through Congress and make it law. So I'm thinking that the executive orders are the initial step to get the ball rolling, get it moving, and then he'll take a lot of these things and he'll try to get them through Congress to make them law. And if he can make them law, it's a lot harder for the next president coming in to reverse it. So that's I'm sure he'll be working on that. So here's one on the J6 DC jail prisoners. There was 1,500 that were pardoned by Trump, and they're being released. They were released some last night, and they're going home, and so that has happened. People have different opinions on that, depending on where your news source is and who you're listening to on the matter. There was not an armed insurrection because nobody that went into the Capitol building was armed. We know that there were people planted in the audience that were planted there for the purpose of trying to get the people to go in. We know the Capitol Police opened the doors for them. These are just facts, folks, that I'm giving you. The Capitol Police opened the doors and basically invited them into the Capitol. So the most say that they may have possibly could have gotten is trespassing, the vast majority of them. But even that's iffy in my book. So this was just my humble opinion, it was just all a setup. And so you guys can take it as you will, but I've always said that the J6ers have been mistreated and that they've been maligned and lied about. Executive order, Alaska's energy resources are coming back online. He's saying we will be energy independent once again. I'm sure prices will begin to go down on fuel. And he wants to start exporting fuel as well, make money on that. Of course, the tariffs, he's talking about the tariffs. And I think initially he's talking about matching the amount of tariffs that they're charging us in foreign countries. That's what he wants to match it for us and bring revenue in that way. Of course, he's talked about the external revenue service versus the internal revenue service. External revenue service would be keeping an eye on making sure that the foreign countries that are bringing goods into our country are paying the tariffs that have been placed on them. And people have talked about. I've heard speeches after his inauguration during the celebration of his coming into office, people saying that taxes would be lowered. Personally, I would love to see the income tax go away completely. And I would love to see the fiat debt money stop being printed and go back to a non-debt currency printed by the U.S. Treasury, not one printed by the Federal Reserve. That's what I would like to see. I would like to see April 15th come to an end and we never have to file taxes on April 15th again. That would be paradise. That would be wonderful. And if you've ever looked to see how much they take out of your paycheck, it's a significant amount, folks, that you're losing out of your paycheck, the money going to the federal government. If they do it right, they won't need that money to fund the government. They won't need income tax to fund Social Security, Medicare, and all of that. They will easily be able to fund those things by tariffs and by making good deals when it comes to trade deals with other countries and through bonds and through other means. So before 1913, that's how they did it. And the country did fine. There were some spots, like after the Civil War, they spent so much money on the war. There were problems with some debt that they were trying to get their way out of. And that's how the international bankers came in and said, we'll bail you out. You just got to form a Federal Reserve. And 1913 is when the income tax came in. And we have been under it my entire life, and multiple lifetimes. So here's a list, and we'll just won't go too much longer. Recess of 78 Biden-era executive orders. In other words, 78 of them are gone. Freeze on federal regulations. Freeze on federal hiring. Federal workers must return to full-time in-person work immediately. That will get rid of 10 to 20% of the workforce right there because they'll quit on their own. Directive to address the cost of living crisis. Withdrawal from the Paris Climate Treaty, which that one's... directive to restore free speech and eliminate government censorship. That having to do with social media and all of that. And a directive to end government weaponization against political opponents. So there's just a few of the things that he was signing. That's some of the big changes. I know with the Biden administration, the censorship thing was heavy. And they wanted to kind of dictate to us how we are to speak, what we are to say, what we're allowed to talk about, what we're not allowed to talk about. And we do talk about something where the boundary lines were as far as what we could say about it. I mean, that's just, so thankfully that is now going away. And so the platforms are beginning to respond to that. I know that Zuckerberg for Facebook has responded to that, saying he's now claiming to be a libertarian, and he's saying we're going to end the fact checkers and go with the same type of platform that Musk has on X, where people are able to pipe in and do comments, and they can have they can argue it out, right? True debate. Which is what free speech is all about. We hash it out. Whoever has the best argument wins, right? Supposedly. All right. I think, let me see if I have anything else for you guys. I just thought I'd give you some stuff that you could chew on and enjoy. Um, so this is so the theories are out there. Now this is the 17 letter of the alphabet stuff. If you know what I'm talking about, here's one Elon Musk parody. It's not Elon Musk, it's Elon Musk parody on X. Says a dissolved corporation does not require a Bible sworn declaration. President Trump is the duly elected president of the Republic of the United States. So they're saying since he didn't put his hand on the Bible, that has a significant meaning, that he's sworn in as the president of the Republic of the United States rather than the corporation of the United States. So they're making a distinguishment between Republic of the United States and corporation of the United States. And if you ever want to do a dive into that and research that, it's pretty interesting reading, but you can make up your own mind on that one. You say, what are you talking about? Well, go look it up. Look up the Corporation of the United States and then versus the Republic of the United States and start reading on it, and you'll get a little bit of an education on what they're talking about. And you can decide whether you think they're correct or incorrect or what. He's pulled his, Trump signed an executive order to finally withdraw the United States from the World Health Organization. Which, the World Health Organization was trying to get it to where if there is a pandemic crisis, that the World Health Organization would have full control over the nation. In other words, the sovereignty of the nation would be given away to the World Health Organization. And the World Health Organization could basically dictate to the United States and the various states and the people in the country what they are to do. Mandate masks, you have to wear it, otherwise it has the force of international law behind it, which would be enforced under a kind of a martial law type of situation that the World Health Organization would bring in. That is gone. That will not happen. And Trump has basically told them, "Oh, we're not dealing with you anymore because you stepped over the line, you went too far, you tried to push too hard, and now you're paying the piper for it." We had a saying in law enforcement: if you abuse it, you lose it. I'll give you an example. We had there's a section in the California Penal Code 148 PC, which says that you cannot delay or stop or restrict an officer. I don't have the wording quite right. You cannot resist or delay an officer in the line of his duties. Okay, and if you do so, you are in violation of 148 PC. I think it was a misdemeanor. And officers began to abuse that law to some degree, and so we would go to training. We had to go back to the academy, go to training every other year for refresher training for perishable skills and things of that nature. It didn't matter. I was on for 26 years and still had to go back for these training sessions, and they would tell us, don't abuse 148 PC. Don't just start arresting everybody for resisting and delaying an officer, because if we do that, we will lose it. The judges will begin to dismiss the cases, and then the legislature will pick it up and they'll take it away from us. So if you abuse it, you'll lose it. That's a principle. Well, the WHO, the World Health Organization, they abused their privilege, and now they have lost their privilege. So that's just a little something there. So Tom Fitton of Judicial Watch put this out. He calls it Pardon Gate, where Biden did all these blanket pardons where there's not anything specific or particular that can be pointed to that this person did wrong, but just in case they might be accused of something in the future, here's a blank pardon. right? Well, Fenton says this. That Donald Trump should ignore the preemptive blanket pardons just issued by whoever is running the Biden warehouse. Specifically, President Trump should immediately court-martial Milley and proceed as appropriate in criminally investigating Fauci, and anyone else on the. I had to hit a little thing here, get it going. Where am I? I lost my spot. Okay. Oh, anyone else on the Biden's list. Okay. The blanket pardons issued by Biden are invalid and constitutional nullities should be considered to have no legal force or effect. So he's giving a legal opinion, and he is the president of Judicial Watch, which they have lawyers, and they've gone to the Supreme Court on cases probably more than anybody. They handle a lot of Supreme Court cases. So they are experts in the law, and he's saying that these blanket pardons are not constitutional, they're not legal. So that's a legal opinion put out by Judicial Watch, but no courts have weighed in on that. We may see that come up in the next 4 years, maybe even to the Supreme Court, so we'll see what happens. December 2020, Jake Tapper asked President-elect Biden about the rumor that Trump may issue some preemptive pardons before leaving office. That's interesting. So that was, and of course Biden was, the preemptive pardon should never be done, and then he turns around, he does it 4 years later. All right, so let's, I think we're going to call it there unless there's anything else that's pressing. The CBO came out. It's the Congressional Budget Office. They're saying the national debt would soar to $23.9 trillion if tax cuts are not extended. The Trump tax cuts not extended. And this was probably put out quite a while back. But they're associating tax cuts with the dropping of the deficit, of the debt, not the increasing of it. And if you're not familiar with the difference between a deficit and a debt, deficit is I have my checking account and I am spending more than I'm bringing in every month, and my checking account is always in the negative by the end of the month. That's a deficit. A debt is I have a loan with the bank or a loan on a car, or I have a credit card balance that needs to be paid. That's a debt. A deficit can result in debt because you borrow money to cover the deficit. So now you go from deficit to debt. The debt covers the amount that you need to spend to take care of the deficit, but now you have debt. So that's the difference between deficit and debt. So TikTok is all over the news. House Speaker Johnson says he plans to uphold law on TikTok ban, but Trump is now saying that he's going to be looking at TikTok, possibility of bringing it back, but only, he's putting this out publicly. He's saying, if we can own 50% of TikTok, the United States own 50% of TikTok, then I won't ban it. But he hasn't given a decision as to whether he will ban it or not ban it. So for those of you who love TikTok and you're on TikTok, that's where it is right now. So Trump is trying to make a deal on TikTok. And I'm sure the Chinese Communist Party is just gritting their teeth over that one, because they own TikTok. Every Chinese company is owned by the government, by the CCP, the Communist Chinese Communist Party. And so they're run by CEOs. They're run like private companies. But if they don't do what the CCP tells them, they could be dissolved. And so TikTok is one of those companies, from what is being put out on the media. And Trump is saying, give us 50% of it. In other words, we have a 50% vote on the board of trustees, and we can stop everything you want to do, China, with TikTok. You say, oh, we want to take the information that we gather on TikTok and use it for intelligence and surveillance. And the United States comes in with its 50% and says, no, you're not. We're voting it down. And you're going to have to get more than 50% to get that through. So, I mean, if you can imagine a dispute in a corporation board where 50% is over here and 50% is over here. So, brilliant move, interesting move by Trump. So he understands business. All right, folks, we'll leave it there for right now. So as you can see, there's a lot of changes that are occurring. So the next 4 years are going to be different than the past 4 years. Significantly different. Looking forward to it. It's been an interesting journey. Let me just leave you with this. People said when Biden went into office that the United States won't survive 4 years of Biden. Well, we have survived 4 years of Biden. People on the other side of the aisle are saying we're not going to survive 4 years of Trump. I beg to differ. We will survive 4 years of Trump. The one who determines the future and the fate of our nation is not, it's not the government. It's not the president. It's not the Supreme Court, and it's not the legislature. It's our Creator, God Almighty. God determines the fate of our nation. And so first and foremost, we need to honor Him and glorify Him and give Him thanks for all He does for us and give Him the praise for anything that happens in our nation that's beneficial to us. And that's my final thought. Thanks for watching, folks. I'll see you next time on the C-Files.